I think the future winners of, the accounting AI race are going to look much different than they look today. I think that you need extreme levels of adaptability and nimbleness. Is that a word? You need to be very nimble and you need to adapt quickly and you need to be willing to do things that are unusual and unique, and you can't have your hands tied behind your back. And to try to take that and implement it in, a pyramid matrix structure, business, large corporation with thousands of employees, extremely difficult.
Bruce, Bruce.
Welcome back, everyone, to Bizarre Brews. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Brandon, who is joining us from North Carolina, and he has a very specific and very interesting role he's been doing since leaving public accounting. And I would love to learn about his journey and what helped him get into this. So, without further ado, welcome, Brandon, to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Pleasure to be here. Doing really well. Getting ready for a big holiday.
Yeah.
So super excited for that and happy to get to know you and share a little bit about what I do and what I've done.
Yeah. And then, so you said that federal holidays are new to you, and we were just chatting before this. Was it because during public accounting, there was you were pretty busy around this time or year round?
Yeah, I think, the client service mindset sort of takes this overwhelming place in your brain of there's always something that you need to be doing or working on. There's a long list of things that you need to accomplish. I was I think always working most holidays, with the exception of maybe Christmas. So, this year I'm actually taking off to observe, Independence Day, and I've got lots of family and friends coming, big party. Should be a great time.
Is this your
first
first
to
time?
celebrate.
Is this your first time hosting a big 4th of July freaking party?
It is. Long story short, my wife has a challenging career.
Yeah.
And she wasn't able to get off for the whole weekend.
Okay.
We were going to be in Charleston.
Yeah.
Because we're in North Carolina now, and Charleston's only a few hours away. Long story short, we had to cancel that. So we said, you know what? Let's bring the fireworks and the party to us.
Sounds good. So as with every podcast, we start off with your journey on what made you get started. So I'm really curious to know what made you want to go in tax and hedge funds specifically. How did that came around? Let's go back to your college days and then your time at school.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I'll start out by framing when I was a student, what those conversations looked like when I was meeting with recruiters and going through that whole process. I always wanted to travel when I was young, and I had just a passion for understanding how the business world operates. And I had some great college professors that told me that if you want to understand business, get to understand accounting. Right? Master accounting, it's a language of business. From there, you can go anywhere. And so I looked into public accounting, and I would ask people for advice. Should I be an auditor or a consultant or a tax professional? And folks told me that, if you love to travel and you're extroverted, you should be an auditor. If you want to sit in a cubicle all day and you're introverted, you should go into tax. And I thought, wow, that's an easy answer. I'm going to go be an auditor. Turns out that wasn't the case for me.
Yeah.
I started at a small firm in South Carolina as an auditor. I was terrible at it. I didn't frankly enjoy it that much. And I think that's probably the major contributing factor to me not being so great. But there was an opportunity at that firm when we had a key tax person leave to start doing a lot of tax work. And at the time, it was individuals, for profits, small businesses. And I loved it. I loved being able to figure out how people make money, how people lose money, what types of investments are fruitful, what types of jobs are, contributing to, big paychecks. And, what are people doing with that money to protect it for generations, right? I got to see all of that. And I found myself going home at night doing Google searches, figuring out how these different rules applied to me. Right? Student loan interest deduction and American, opportunity credit versus the lifetime learning credit, all those types of questions. I can tell you with certainty when I was an auditor, I never went home and Googled anything. Maybe I went home and cracked a beer on a Friday, but that was about it. So I knew relatively early on that that's the direction that I wanted to go, but I didn't know without trying it. So, my advice to folks that are in school, students, it honestly doesn't even matter what you try first. You've got the rest of your life ahead of you to try lots of different things. Just go try something, right? Get the best advice you can from folks. and go try something. And if you don't like it, then try something else and do that over and over again and iterate until you find that area where, your unique skill set is compatible with the role that you're in. So that's how I got started in tax. And I left that small firm, which is another good story. I basically, I knew I had to go to grad school to get my CPA credits for the exam, right? I knew I wanted to get a master's in tax because I wanted to pursue a tax career. So I quit my job and I sold everything I had. I'm talking like mattress, TI-80 calculator, old textbooks, everything. And I packed what I did have left into an '02 Chevy Blazer and I drove from Greenville, South Carolina to New York City. A good friend of mine from college was selling his parents' home in Bayonne, New Jersey. And he let me stay in the spare bedroom until the house sold for like, I think it was maybe $200 a month. So that's what I did. And I was eating, canned chicken and rice cakes for a while.
Yeah.
But it was the most exciting time of my entire life, up until I got married and had kids. And that started a whole new journey at RSM. And I was at RSM for over a decade doing, tax compliance, tax consulting in the hedge fund space and
Yeah.
a lot of private equity work as well.
Yeah, let's talk about like your time at like RSM, like, and before so you did the masters to get your credits, the 150, like the units you need to sit for the CPA exam. Then how did that journey come about? And then why did you pick RSM over the other firms? What was that process like? Did you do an internship and then you like, all right, I'm going to go full time, or you just jumped right in?
Yeah, look, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, right? So I was trying to choose the most exciting career path outcome and just follow my interest. I knew I wanted to get my master's in tax because tax was interesting to me. So that drew me to several potential cities. Yeah, I looked at Chicago. I looked at Texas. I looked at a couple schools in New York, Fordham, Baruch. I ended up going with Baruch because economically it was like, hands down on paper, it was the best investment. So I moved to New York. And when I was aggressively looking for jobs, because I didn't have any money, I was doing everything I could. I was interviewing with all the firms. I genuinely feel that most firms, some exceptions, especially lately, but they're more or less the same as far as what you're doing day to day, right? The accounting work is the same. Your clients may be different by orders of magnitude on the revenue side, but, a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet. And if you're good at Excel, you're good at Excel and you can get the work done quicker somewhere else. At least that used to be the case. And I judged those firms on criteria that was mostly suitable to where am I gonna be the best fit? Like, do I want to spend a lot of time with these people? Do I want to be associated with them? Are they coming off as professional and polished and knowledgeable and talented? And if I sink a ton of effort and commitment into helping this organization succeed. Am I going to be proud of that? So several places I interviewed, interviewers didn't show up on time, or, I had maybe another bad experience where just I didn't feel like people were asking me good questions, or maybe they weren't really paying attention to my answers. And when I interviewed with RSM, I got a great lineup, very interesting people, very professional, dressed well. And I thought that's who I want to be associated with. So that's really what led to my decision. And, there's a lot of great firms out there. I thought, honestly, I was going to end up at Big Four, but I thought I would give RSM a chance to see how it goes. And frankly, I never really thought I would leave RSM. We can get into it, but I was very happy up until I left 2 months ago. In fact, I would be honored to be back there again one day. I think they're an excellent firm. And the leadership there is like uniquely good at seeing what's coming down the pike long term and positioning themselves to address that. I really firmly believe that. So that's the long answer to your question.
No, that's good because so at RSM you started, and were you instantly in the hedge fund group, or did you start off as like another practice, then slowly leaned in? I'm assuming based in New York City or on the East Coast, big hedge fund area and private equity space. So was that just a natural pull where you were in?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. When I started, I believe I had the option of joining 3 groups that had, Rex Open, SALT, ITAX, and at the time it was just the FS practice, financial services practice. And I was torn between ITAX and financial services because I grew up with this, really strong interest in traveling and learning different languages. I took Mandarin in undergrad. I grew up in South Florida where a lot of people spoke Spanish. I had that craving for culture, but I never really had the funds or the means to travel internationally. So I was really torn between the two. But I was also, 23 years old, living in financial district, merely steps away from the New York Stock Exchange, down on Wall Street, and, waking up every morning and seeing people in, nice suits,
Yeah.
with their Starbucks in hand, pacing quickly into the into the stock exchange building, and that fascinated me. And I've always been fascinated with capital markets. Even as a kid, my dad used to get me books about Warren Buffett and lessons from the Legends of Wall Street and One Up on Wall Street, and it was just a good fit for me. I was fascinated by it, and the chance to have some meaningful impact on this industry that really changes the world was exciting for me. Like, to do work that you could read the Wall Street Journal the next day and
Yeah.
see familiar names, like, oh, I know all about this. I know
Yeah.
what they're talking about, even if it was in some very minimal way. It was exciting, right? It got me excited to wake up in the morning and go to work. So I chose financial services, and it was thrilling. It still is. It's an exciting industry, and it's an important industry for America.
And then, okay, what was your first stock that you ever bought?
The first stock that I ever bought, I think it was Ford stock. I loved the Ford Mustang growing up as a kid. Never owned one.
Yeah.
Probably a good thing, but I was impressed that they didn't take money from the federal government during the auto bailout. And I thought, that's a company I can get behind. I learned more about that as I got older, but I still stand behind it. They're a good company.
Yeah.
Lots of issues.
Do you own any Ford?
No, I own lots of Tesla stock now. Full disclosure, no Ford stock anymore, but
Okay.
I think they've got some good cars. I had a Ford Ranger recently. It was when I left New York City. I had to get something.
Yeah.
And it was good. Then I had kids. Now I've got a minivan.
Nice.
That's for a different podcast.
Are you gonna jump into like a Ford F-150? Are you like part of that or the Raptors?
I would probably go Cybertruck before I went Ford F-150.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if Tesla makes a 6-seater SUV type on the Cybertruck chassis,
Yeah.
I'm sold. I already told my wife, we're gonna have to liquidate some stock.
Nice. Perfect. Okay. So your time at like in the hedge fund space, what does a day to day look like? And like, how do those responsibilities change from like going from a staff to a senior to a manager and then eventually a senior manager? Like, are you attending meetings, just taking in notes for the first few years and then doing those K1 compliance work? Or are you doing more structuring, making sure they're going through those?
Sure. I want to make sure that my advice is relevant because, as I'm sure we'll get to, the pace of change with technology is exponential right now.
Yeah.
And, as many in the industry say, we're in the singularity now, right? Where AI is changing everything we do rapidly.
Yeah.
So, the procession in duties and responsibilities from associate up to senior manager looked a lot different for me than it's going to look for people who are starting their career today. But to answer your question plainly, at the beginning, you're struggling to learn more concepts that are important for your industry. And the vast majority of your work is really, compliance, data entry, data manipulation. Nowadays, it's mostly data manipulation, right? You're learning Alteryx, you're learning proprietary software, especially in the investment fund space, allocations and tiering and hedge fund trade analysis. That's a large bulk of what you're doing at the early stages. And then as you move up into review roles, you start to learn a little bit more about how the sausage is made, meaning how to manage staff, right? And how to get people to get work done for you and motivate them. That's a huge part of the job at, like, I'd say the manager level, right? You want to be someone that people want to work with, but you also don't want to get stepped on and, get poor output or low quality work. So as you rise above that preparation level, you would get to that, overseeing small teams. And depending on what your interest is, like at a firm like RSM, it was really easy to reach for responsibilities that maybe partners and senior managers were doing and just voice interest in taking on those responsibilities and go do them without much pushback. So, something I learned early on was that, partners hated doing billing and they hated doing WIP review.
No.
So like learning how to contribute to that as a manager was huge.
Yeah.
learning how to like really think about the work you're doing and the fees that your clients are paying, and whether the fees justify the work. And in a lot of cases, the people really doing the work at the manager, senior associate level, they really know what's going into it, right? They really understand the inputs more than the data is going to show you for billable hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so to the extent that you can find ways to lessen the burden for the folks above you by identifying those opportunities, that's the ticket at those levels. But it's hard to do if you are struggling with your core responsibilities. So as you matriculate, up to like senior manager level, then the focus turns much more towards, building relationships and managing those relationships. And for folks that are, ideally chasing partner, it's a new skill. It's new muscles that you've generally not had the opportunity to flex as a staff. Um, how do you carry yourself in a client meeting where someone of authority at the client, maybe CFO, asks you a really difficult question and you do not know the answer, right? How do you fill that awkward silence? How do you carry yourself going out to dinner with colleagues? How do you um, approach really complex issues that you think you know what the answer is, but you're not sure? Do you know who to go to get the right answers? Like those skills are what matter most at the upper levels, because you're never going to know everything. So you have to know strategically, how do I solve this problem given my skill set and my connections in my network, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you there's other people in these large organizations who know the answers. So do you know them? Right? How strong is your Rolodex? Can you issue spot without being an expert in that area? Those are the skills and the muscles which you're strengthening.
Interesting. Okay, so I have a follow up on that. It's when we're doing like giving a answer on tax questions and like bringing that up with clients, context is really important, and like also having full detail and knowledge about it, right? Because then answers can change rapidly depending on like where the situation is going, on like specifically missing details. Then it goes from it depends to be like, okay, yes or no, though that's where we fill in the gray. How do you, as a senior manager level, as you said, that sometimes you wouldn't know the answer, and like knowing enough, how would you manage that fine line between like giving, and would you just say, let me get back to you on that? Because sometimes I believe that if you're on the client and if you're always just telling them that, because then they're like, okay, how are you advising me or not? So how do you manage
Sure.
that expectation?
Yeah, that part's tough. Your clients are smart, just like you are, and they can smell when you don't know what you're talking about, right? Now, what I think matters a lot more than knowing the answers is your willingness to work hard to go find the answers. I think, just if I have to imagine what my clients would answer to that question, my old clients, I'm sure they would say, yep, I don't care if you know the answer or not. Are you going to work tirelessly to go find the answer and help give me the best possible data to make the right decision? That's what matters, right? And I think that's why I would go back to the fact that the skills that you're really mastering at the upper levels isn't rote memorization or learning the code like the back of your hand. All those can come in handy. It's understanding what are the major issues that a transaction like this might run afoul of, or what are some critical pieces of data that I know are going to come up when we go through this transaction that I have to get a handle on. Issue spotting, right? And do I have the ability to find the answer for this problem? Am I willing to stay up late, wake up early, call people relentlessly until I can find someone who knows the answer, and then understand the issue and then get back to my client? I think that's the core skill that matters.
Interesting. And then would you advise, let's say, if you're a student like who has accepted a job at like a public accounting firm, would you tell them to jump into a specialization practice, or would you tell them now, hey, try out the different things, figure out what you want? Like you said, you had the option between SALT, international tax, and financial services. Would you tell them to do the same thing or do a bunch of them? Because like once you're locked in, you're kind of locked in.
Yeah, I'd almost push back on that a little bit, meaning being locked in, you're locked in. I think you make the best decision based on people that you've spoken to and based on advice from others. Follow your gut, and you have a long career ahead of you. You can make mistakes over and over again. You can go work, in public accounting for 15 years and then decide public accounting is not for you and go start a marketing business. It's okay. So I think maybe take the pressure off your shoulders a little bit and making the right decision Because even though for you in your life, this is the most important decision maybe you'll make yet, that's going to keep happening. It's
Yeah.
going to keep happening every year. Every year, you're going to have to make those difficult decisions. Should I leave public accounting and start a podcast, start a business?
Yeah.
Right? Those difficult decisions are going to keep coming throughout the rest of your life. So it's okay if you don't necessarily know exactly what the right answer is. That's the ambiguity and the essence and style to life is you got to find that fit
Yeah.
and don't be afraid to jump, right?
Hmm.
And make that decision.
Yeah, that's like actually like a really good point, and I like tell people like that's like a really good like mindset to have, because when I started in public accounting, I felt like one bad decision here, one bad decision on like which field I choose is going to set me back 10 years. Or like as over time, I realized like, no, there's like a lot of redos you could do. But you also have to like, if you're going to do something, give it your all. So you at least you can learn something from it, right? And then you can
100%.
take from there. So then
100%. Whatever you're doing, do it 100%. It doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Nothing's beneath you. You've got to give it 100%. And if it doesn't work out, then you leave. No matter where you go, people are going to remember who you were there. They're not going to remember, review comments on a 1040,
yeah.
but they're going to remember that you stayed late to fix them, right?
Yeah. And then where do you stand? And now I'm like pretty curious to like get your views on it, because I haven't. Where people say like, okay, it doesn't need to be, you don't have to work late, or you don't have to put in those 80 hours a week. My understanding, or like people push back on like this work-life harmony or balance work, like a 9 to 5. My personal opinion is like in the initial years, you have to put in the work because you're trying to climb this slope and uphill of like learning a very technical concept, which is tax. And after that, it depends on like where, like then you can have more control over your schedule.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that extends forever. Not to get philosophical, but I think humans are creatures of competition.
Yeah.
To the extent you're not putting your all into something, why even do it at all? If the difference between you being successful is putting in 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week, is the extra 10 really going to cost you? What are you not doing? You're watching less TV, right? You're less doom scrolling on Instagram. I like the whole work-life balance thing. Frankly, I don't really buy into it. Like, what do you want, right? Just put energy and effort into the things that you want to achieve. And if it's something that's not career oriented, then that's fine. But if that's something that's important to you, or making or building something that other people could use or make other people's lives better, like go put your energy into that. It should be exciting for you to wake up and want to make a difference. And I'm not saying that like, you're going to cure someone's cancer, but like you're going to have an impact on someone else's business, right? And that business might provide services and goods for lots of people. And if that doesn't get you excited, then you're probably doing the wrong thing. So that's like the philosophical answer to your question. But in principle, I definitely agree. And look, when you're young, you've got so much time. You've got so much time and you really don't realize it, but like you've got nothing else to do. Get after it, right?
Yes.
and the effort you put in at the beginning of your career will provide this foundation such that 10 years after that, you can afford to leave and do something else and experiment, right? So like, again, everything you do, the people you work with are going to remember who you were, right? And that reputation is going to follow you no matter what industry you leave for, if you decide to leave or you try to go work at another firm. The accounting world is very, very small. Even when you switch industries, you're going to run into the same people again. So, that work ethic is like, it's like you can smell it like a shark can smell blood in the water. Everyone knows the person that's putting in a significant amount of effort and they're successful as a result.
Okay, so clearly you were on that partnership track at RSM, and you're like 10 years in, few more years in, and you would probably have like called up to like that partnership. What changed in between like that career mindset to finally decide like I want to go experiment over here?
Yeah. It's a great question because there was no reason on paper why I should have left. RSM, great firm. The folks that the partners that I worked for, amazing leadership, right direction. The outlook for the business positive. All the effort I put into building a strong network internally over a decade, like that work was paying its dividends. Clients, fantastic. Even recent wins that I was super proud of and developed amazing relationships from that I wanted to continue to grow. I didn't think about leaving until I was listening to, so I follow SpaceX, XAI, Tesla. I occasionally listen to like their all hands calls and, investor calls. And I was listening to an XAI all hands call shortly after the announcement of the acquisition by SpaceX and the growth of their teams. They were hiring aggressively. Well, curiosity got the best of me. I went to the careers page, looked at the human data group, and I saw that they were hiring in-house tutors for finance and accounting, and particularly within accounting, tax expert. So I follow a lot of AI content and super interested and passionate about it. And I have been trying to learn more about this for a while now. There was this limited window in my lifetime for me to go build something real, even if my contribution would be minimal, but to go build something real with the most exciting company in history. How could I not go? So that's what I did. And it was really hard to do for a number of reasons. Again, on paper, and I won't go to the details, like the cons list was long, but in the pros column, it was work for a company where everyone shares a mission that's awesome. And like Elon says, makes you want to get out of bed in the morning and gets you excited and go learn at, what I consider to be a frontier lab from other amazing people who are also all trying to do the same thing. Like there's no substitute for that. So that's what I did. And it was really difficult to do. And like, I joke with some of my former colleagues, it's like kind of like I never left. Like, I'll still take a phone call here and there and,
Yeah.
and I was in New York last week, hosting a dinner with old colleagues and clients because it's like, it's a part of who I am. But to go on this side quest, I'll call it, and have this unique opportunity to contribute and really build something. And it's exciting. It's awesome.
So you're in a really unique position where you're working for a frontier lab right now, and you also come from public accounting. Where do you see, do you think the public accounting companies, they were investing a lot of money in this new tech phase and this AI phase? Do you think the efforts they're putting in, is it wheeling out results, or do you think they're lagging behind and that they need to catch up?
Yeah. So first, I think I need to preface that, everything I'm sharing with you is strictly my opinion.
Yeah.
And it comes from really my RSM experience and my experience with other, working with clients and friends in other firms. In no way, shape, or form do my opinions represent SpaceX AI.
Yep.
In fact, most of them would probably disagree with me on a lot of my opinions. So, take that as a grain of salt with, anything I might share. But my own personal belief is these firms, they obviously know it's important. It's in every corporate slide deck,
Yeah.
and it has been for the past couple of years about strategy and, forecasting. And my own personal belief is that it's very difficult for these large firms to retrofit an old structure with something new that has never existed before. And I think the future winners of the accounting AI race are going to look much different than they look today. I think that you need extreme levels of adaptability and nimbleness. Is that a word? You need to be very nimble and you need to adapt quickly and you need to be willing to do things that are unusual and unique, and you can't have your hands tied behind your back. And to try to take that and implement it in, a pyramid matrix structure, business, large corporation with thousands of employees, extremely difficult. I don't think it's going to work. Now, that being said, I think a lot of these big firms realize that, at least some people do, but I think the way that they look is going to change dramatically over the next few years. Like, I don't know, my prediction's probably like 2030. We're going to start seeing, and maybe sooner, probably sooner, like crazy competition from a revenue perspective for all these large firms that are competing with startups, startup accounting firms that are lean and they're leveraging AI. And, they have their own sort of curated app layer on top of this, on top of strong AI models that leave much of the work that we used to do in a very short period of time for low fees. IRS came out recently and said that, look, firms that are using AI,
Have
right,
to pass on the savings.
you got to pass on the savings, right? And like, although like that gets me excited to see that, like, okay, they understand what's coming. I don't even think they have to say that because there's going to be so much competition in the market with these small firms,
Yeah.
these startups, I'll call them. And then it could be the existing firms basically spin up digital twins, right, of their current operations. And that's how they win in the market. And I think that's probably a really good idea.
Yeah.
But like, that's where the competition is going to come from. So like, you don't have to worry about lowering your fees because someone else is going to eat your lunch, right? And frankly, like, there's a lot of thought leadership. You see this on LinkedIn. People say AI is going to be great for accountants. It's not going to replace us. It's just going to make us better. I think those people are lying, and I don't think it's their fault because I think someone of authority probably lied to them. But I'm not a doomer. I'm optimistic because I think what we think of as accounting, meaning the work that we used to do, like the prep work that I did as an associate and senior associate, that ship has sailed, man.
Yeah.
That ship has sailed.
No, agree 100%. And it's kind of a good thing. I remember my first year, like 2 a.m, just trying to, in the locator, trying to see like, why doesn't my Fed tie to my state?
Right.
And like, why
Right.
doesn't revenue tie and what's messing it up? And I'm like, did I learn anything from it? Probably I was just really good at like checkpoint, like going through the system in one source, right? But did I pick up any technical skills about apportionment or like public PLR? Not really, right? So that should change, and that should just, they say, oh, but you have to go through these phases. But why, honestly, the first 2 years, right? Why can't I just do it from like the first day, and then that will separate the cream from the crop?
Right. 100%. And again, I know this is going to be a controversial take, but like, there is a lot of good work that we do today that's not compliance work, meaning like CPAs, right? I don't think that like the consulting side of things means that we're immune to being replaced by AI. So many people are looking at like the models of yesterday, meaning like Opus 4.8, GPT 5.4, Grok 4.3, and saying, oh, well, you can't use it today to do, write a full tax memo on your M&A transaction. That's flawless. And the answer is, yeah, actually, you probably could. It might take like 20 flips, you might burn a ton of tokens.
Yeah.
You could eventually probably get one if you gave it the right context that was accurate. So if you extrapolate based on the exponential curve of the development of this technology, the consulting part's going to be pretty easy too for LLMs in a lot of contexts. I'm not saying everything, but like, if you were to look at where your revenue is coming from today and extrapolate, like, okay, if the tools that my clients are going to have access to are extremely effective in that realm, how much are they going to be willing to pay you? That's the golden question. Revenue. Where's the revenue going to come from? And, if you just, you follow that exponential development of technology, I think you get there pretty soon. I may be generous saying 2030. When the federal government tells you that you literally are not allowed to access the latest LLM model because it's too good at knowledge work, you should take them at their word. Fable 5, which is nerfed, is so good at identifying vulnerabilities in code, which is knowledge work, that you're not, the average person, at least up until yesterday afternoon, is not allowed to access it, right? So take that and, follow the curve along. And where are we in 2 years, right? A lot is going to change. But I gave you the doomerist, speech. On the optimistic side, this frees us up to do literally whatever we want. Like the access to starting your own CPA firm or finding unique and interesting ways to help your businesses solve complex problems they're facing. Like the sky is the limit. But even if you decide you want to go open a bakery, like it's easy you don't need an accountant. You don't need a lawyer. You don't need all of these things that you used to need, right, to help start that business. So it frees up people to do a lot of things. I think, to the extent that there is like a jobs boom coming, I fully subscribe to that. I think, there's going to be so many jobs coming. We already see it in the data as a result of AI, software engineering, that's huge, right? Because there's just so much opportunity and like there's so much cool stuff you can do now. But it's just not what it looked like the past 10 years or the past 50.
Yeah. And then now would you say, like, if you are basically having that fork in the road, taking back from Elon, if you have that aspect, would you say like the firm would you suggest someone to go start their own firm with like all that AI enablement and then be very nimble and bring that like stuff on? And when you, let's say they do, would you tell them like, hey, go focus on a niche first, dominate that vertical, and then go horizontal?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I think if you have a good idea, you should see it through, because good ideas used to be cheap and execution was really expensive.
Yeah.
Execution is getting cheaper. It's getting cheaper by the day. And if you have a good idea, an interesting idea, I think you should pursue it. But I don't think people should give up on these big firms. I'll use RSM as an example because I used to work there. Great firm. I think they're going to be really successful in the future. It's just not going to look like it does today. So if you're at one of these firms and maybe you share a similar mindset to me, just be vocal and talk to leadership whenever you get the chance and say like, hey, here's what I think about what's coming. Here's some ideas I have of some changes I think we should make, such that we can, you know, keep up with the advancements in frontier AI, and try to make change from where you're at. At a very minimum, you should be using these tools like crazy. You should be spending hours a day using different tools. I mean, honestly doesn't matter exactly which model you're using. You should use Grok. I would recommend that. There's a new model coming relatively soon. Should be great. But any of them are excellent. Claude, ChatGPT.
Yeah. And then, all right. So now, like, let's move into like one of our final segments. I want to talk about like the work. Also, I saw on your profile that you do a lot of nonprofit work. Are you still continuing that? And like, what made you want to like start doing that volunteer work? And then, how do you want to like pursue that as part of like your new career as well?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. When I first moved to New York City, there's something about living in a big city. You have more time because everything's so convenient. And I had a lot of time to fill, and I wanted to try new things, meet new people, and like do good at the same time.
Yeah.
I've never been someone who's really that into sports, or so for me, spending a Saturday, up in the Bronx teaching young children math was like way more interesting than like, I don't know, going to the bar to watch a football game. So I did a lot of odd and interesting things in the city through New York Cares. I was on the board of a small theater company for a long time in New York, which was great, really awesome experience. Things that were not really within my comfort zone because I'm an accountant, right? I was never much of a theater person, and that sort of my brain probably never developed fully. So just to get some exposure to new things and different people and different walks of life was awesome for me. Now, after leaving New York, I got married, and we very quickly had two young, beautiful children. And so my free time is gone.
Yeah.
And every spare second I have, I'm like running prompts through, co-work and creating things and trying to build things. So, I've taken a step back recently from doing that, but I'm feeling that creative void with sort of what I'm doing now as an AI tutor. And although I'm not going to speak about, SpaceX AI proper, just the AI tutor role today and in general is very interesting. You really get to understand how these models work, and you can sort of extrapolate where they're going and, what the focus is, and very acutely what they're good at and what they're not good at over time. Granted, I'm just getting started. Only been doing this for less than a couple months now, but it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And then let's say you're done with this AI tutor role. Like, I know you're pretty involved with like the nonprofit work. Then let's say the kids grow up, they go to college of the future. We don't know what that looks like anymore now. What's one cause? Like, do you want to like if you could start your own foundation, what does it look like?
I don't know. I'm stocking money away into a 529
Yeah.
every couple of weeks. I'm thinking, I wonder what this money is going to be used for, because it's not college.
Maybe they change it, right? Maybe you could start.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like an adult, lightly supervised adult daycare.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of what college is now. I think I paid like thousands of dollars for courses that, astronomy and English and theater. But I don't know. I think if I really wanted to do good, it would probably be in like the education realm, mostly just because it's fun and exciting for me. Spending time like helping people see that they can be better than they are today, I think is awesome. I really enjoy those moments when you see someone kind of get something and understand something, right? It's just like you see the light bulb click. And there's a lot of opportunities to do that in public accounting, to be a mentor, to teach people, and I love that. I don't know, it'd probably be in the education realm if I had to guess, but again, with the advent of AI, education world is going to change a lot too.
Yeah, but you're at like the forefront to do it. So I think this has been great. Really loved all your insights. I think you're at like the forefront of like where the profession is going to be going, where it's going. So like looking forward to following along your journey and watching what you guys do, and excited for the new croc model to come out. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you, Brendan, so much for joining and giving us your time.
Awesome. Adam, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, yeah. Bruce.